Hi screen printers, this is Colin from Ryonet. Today we're going to talk about the tools we use to actually create our screens once they are coated and dried and ready to be exposed. This video we're not really going to talk about exposure units. There's tons of videos out there about everyone's exposure unit and how they're amazing and all the rest of it. LED bottom line, 405 nanometers for the wavelength. Anything less was not going to give you a proper crosslink. Metal halide is still king, always will be. Laser's really cool, looking forward to the future of it. That's exposure units, done. What I want to talk about is the films, creation of films, the actual thickness of your emulsion, your EOM, Emulsion Over Mesh, and it's expressed as a ratio. And it's all based around the thickness of your thread diameter. And it's not just the thread diameter itself, but it's also where the mesh overlaps that little knuckle right there. That's the thickest part of your mesh, and that's what it's measured off of. So we'll go into all of that. I have a tool here for actually measure emulsion thickness, and it's not something that I want you to go, oh, I gotta go get this tool. It's just something to relate emulsion thickness to how you saw me actually coating in the last video. So we'll go over what the thickness of the thread is and then what the thickness of the emulsion is. And you're gonna see a lot of variables because I also did not do screens that were perfectly dry. I did this to show all the variances that you can run into for different reasons. You know, you gotta rush and get a screen done, you grab one, it happens to be sitting around a while, maybe there was lint on the screen or just something weird happened to it. So you're gonna see a variance in the coatings of the emulsion and what it looks like. And so you can understand kind of a visual understanding of an of an emulsion thickness when you look at this. First, what I want to talk about is our actual films. As we all know, there are multiple types of units out there to actually create films. We have old school laser printers. We have thermal printers. Originally, there were stat cameras and there was Rubylith. We're not going to worry about those for this conversation. Some people even use vinyl film or vinyl. They'll cut it out on their vinyl cutter, and they'll use that either as their film positive or to cover their screen with. It functions. It's not ideal, but they do function. Your most common choice is going to be an inkjet printer. One of the things I want to talk about is film and the density of film. I'm going to grab a sheet. So with inkjet film, we know that it's not perfectly clear, but it is pretty darn clear. It stops just a little bit of UV light. This is basically the one film type that we don't worry about it actually stopping light. But I'm going to go over something here a little later that's going to show you that it does stop light. There's a coated side and an uncoated side. Your coating is actually important for actually holding onto your ink from the inkjet printer and helping it to maintain its density and also its dot shape, which it's difficult to move this camera around. So it's not something that's going to be easy for me to show in this video, but a really easy thing for you to do is just to pick up a loop. It's just a little 10x loop. Got a little magnifier there. There's ones that are a little bit more complex. And just go to a light source, like I happen to have this table here with light, and put it on top, or you just hold it up to a light and put your loop up to it to check your edge detail. You're gonna find inkjet printers do not give you a really sharp, clean edge. And that's something that a lot of us go, my films aren't sharp. Well, go back and double check your films. There's a lot of things that compound to not giving us a nice sharp edge on our stencil. But that's another video, a bigger video. Right now, we're just going to talk about the film itself. So, inkjet, it's a limiting function. You can only get to a certain level of resolution. It's little picoliter dots. dropping in and trying to create fine, super halftone dots. Also really sharp, clean edges on curved surfaces. Once you get into that, you'll start to recognize that there are some limitations to what we do. We can do a lot, but always there are all these things that interplay, all these interlocking variables that we want to be aware of, not to make this sound too complex. But here in the darkroom, from the time we dry our screen to the time we actually rinse it out and have a screen ready to go, this is 80–90% of where the variables come together to either give you a good screen or a screen that's going to fall apart on press or not give you the resolution that you need. Everything starts here in your screen room. And I hate to say it, it starts with one of your lowest paid members in the shop, the guy who reclaims your screens. So think about that for a moment. Recognize that this space may not be your money maker, but it's the foundation upon which you make money. So with that said, I'm going to talk about exposure calculators. Many of you know I'm a big fan of these little suckers. This is a 21-step grayscale calculator, also known as a Stouffer strip. This is going to save your life on more occasions than not. I'm going to show you how to spray this out to a solid step 7 when we actually get to the rinsing out step. But this is tiny and it will fit anywhere. I'm going to do a high detail film. Let's see, how does this look? So it's really super fine type, fine, not type, but fine detail. And you're going to be surprised at how easy it is to actually get all this detail out. So I also have in here a droplet density test. And it's a little more, you can see here at the top, it's a little thinner, and then it gets denser and denser down as we go. So, kind of rambling here. There's a lot to bring together. I haven't talked about this very much. Please forgive me. So going back to inkjet films. We're laying down a layer of ink, and it's one of two forms. It's either a UV blocking ink, like you have in the Epson units, or it's a dye ink that is meant to completely stop all light. So you have to go for extreme density within that film laydown, which is why you have all black ink cartridge sets and rips that are necessary to drive all black ink cartridges. With the newer Epsons, I happen to be using an Epson T3270. I have the inks in there are actually formulated for UV blocking, and those are the films that I've been using since I got here. They're all coming out of a T3270. I'm having great success with 55 and 60 LPI halftones. So we know that they block plenty of UV light. So the RIP software and why it's needed when you're using an inkjet printer. The RIP software actually allows you to have a droplet density that you can control. You can either lay down a very thin deposit, a very thin layer of density, or a very dense layer of black as needed for what you're doing. And that's what I'm going to do with this droplet density test. I'm going to expose this, and we're going to show what the minimum needed droplet weight is going to be in order to achieve a good stencil. All the films that I'm running are at a droplet weight of 12. What's working for me. My dot gain is within acceptable parameters and everything else involved. So with that said, we're going to go into pulling out a screen. We're going to pull out a standard thread screen, and then I'm going to pull out a thin thread screen, and we're going to measure what this is. I'm going to talk in rough numbers. We don't need to dive into nitty-gritty on this. This is, again, just a better understanding of what it is that we have and what we're using. So this, and now we can see this really well, is the first screen that I coded, where you can see that it's thicker along the edges. And what I'm going to do is I'm first going to use this tool. This is a background. Once I put this on here, it creates a connection current. So I'm going to first get the thickness of the threads. It's looking like 82, 83 micron thickness for the actual mesh itself. And then I'm going to come over here. And that's 91. So a quick and dirty way to figure out what your EOM percentage is to take your thread diameter, find out what 10% of that is, and it's as simple as just moving a decimal point. So it was 83 microns for the thread. I can take that 83.0 and move that decimal point over in between the 8 and the 3. So 10% is 8.3. And I'm just going to say 8 for this. And then here, so that was 83. I've got 93 microns here in the middle. So let's see, 83 plus 8 would give me 91. So I'm at about 10% EOM. And remember, this screen was 2 coats and 1 coat. And that gave me about 10% EOM. Now I'm going to go up here to this thick area. This was, again, 93. And this, 136. So this is approximately 40 microns thicker in this area that's denser than it is here in the middle. This is definitely going to take longer to expose than this area in here. And a lot of us do create stencils that are like this. We have these thicker corners and thicker sections because we don't coat optimally, or we're out of habit and we got to work and get back into habit. That's me. So this is about 10% EOM. I did a 2 and 1 with my coating. I'm going to pull out a thin thread and I'm going to show you what that one looks like by going 1 and 1. And I angled back so that I'm scraping more than I was letting emulsion through. Now this is one of those screens that I was talking about that was kind of laying around. And you can see that it's kind of streaky, it's not the greatest, but this is a reality. This is actually one of the things I was hoping that I could get on video, is that we're not going to have a perfect screen. And for the purposes of testing and showing on a video like this, I shouldn't have a perfect screen. I should have an average screen or a flawed screen and show you how we deal with that. So again, let's find out what the thread diameter thickness is on the thin thread. It's looking like 60 microns. The other one was 83, this one's 60. Thin thread definitely has a thinner, lower profile. So let's see what my EOM is. I'm at about 80 micron. Let's go over here to this slightly darker area. That's 87, so it's 7 microns thicker where it's a little darker. And that's what we're going to find. The darker colored emulsions is going to be thicker because, again, light transmittal, color, all the rest of that. So about 80. A little thinner on the end here. 77, 76. But we're going to say 80, and again, this was 60, 62. So 10% of 60 is 6, but I've got to go up 20, so 6 times 3, that's 18. So I have over 30% EOM here. And again, I did fewer coats on this thin thread 157 than I did on the standard mesh 157. I just want to show for those of you out there who have adopted thin thread that it's very easy to get a very thick layer of emulsion with using thin thread. So much easier to print with, but that's also why your exposure times are getting a little bit longer with thin thread than they are with standard mesh. You actually have more emulsion in there for the light to traverse and then get to the other side and give you a fully exposed stencil from this side where the light hits it first to this side where the light goes last, to get this side fully cross-linked and able to withstand the rigors of screen printing, solvents, water-based inks, everything that we have in our screen printer's arsenal. So I'm going to put this back in the dry rack. And for those of you paying attention from the last video, my humidity in there is 25%, and it's been sitting at about 87, 88 degrees over the 3-day weekend that we just had. So I think that's about it. I do want to emphasize looking at rips and understanding the density that you're going to get out of a rip. I'm going to show actually exposing the screen on the next video. I'm going to show rinsing it out and all the things that we really want to look at. I'm going to be focusing more on the screen itself and less on me. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good. If I need to go back and make any adjustments, you'll notice it as edits in here. Thank you, screen printers. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.